If your playing is still embarrassingly sloppy, you're not alone. Today, you and we're going to take care of that sloppy playing once and for all. One of the biggest reasons that your playing still sounds sloppy is simply because of unwanted string noise. If you just cut out that unwanted string noise, suddenly you're playing clean, just like your favorite guitar players. You're playing those lines that sound fresh, smooth, and now you're expressing just like you want to on the guitar. So today I'm going to teach you a muting technique in your right hand and two muting techniques in your left hand to cut out that unwanted string noise. We're going to take care of this once and for all. Now, what we're doing is we're working our right hand technique in isolation from our left hand. This is really powerful, and here's why it's powerful. When you work the right hand in isolation from the left hand, you're developing a deep familiarity with how it feels to implement this technique correctly. So much so that when you do add in the left hand to fuse with the right hand, you're so comfortable and so aware of how it feels to do it correctly with the right hand that if this technique in your right hand starts to fall off the tracks, you'll notice it right away. If you don't have a deep sense of familiarity with how it feels, keyword feels, to do it correctly in the right hand, when you implement this left hand and start to fuse it together, you won't be as aware when your right hand starts to fall off the tracks and you lose the technique. As you commit to practicing this new skill, you're going to be blown away at how clean you sound, even with just in 10 minutes of practice time. First of all, let me just say that these techniques that I'm about to teach you, they're not the law. They're not the only right way to do it. You might find yourself taking these techniques as a foundation and making slight modifications or tweaks to them to fit your playing style better. And that's totally okay. I encourage you to do that if that's what you feel like you should be doing. So before we start with the right hand, go ahead and grab your guitar because we're going to work on this together today. So we have our B string as our target string, and the right hand, its job is to mute the strings above the target string. So if I'm playing on the B string, what I want to do is I want to use some portion of either the side of my thumb, anywhere from the side of my thumb all the way down to my palm, and I want to lay that portion of my palm or my side of my thumb on top of the strings above the target string that I'm playing. So I lightly lay them here, and I can develop an alternate picking pattern here. And in this scenario, the B string is making the sound and none of the other strings are emitting that unwanted noise. Here is the right way to do it. And then the wrong way to do it. So the right way, laying your hands on the strings above the target string. And we get a nice satisfying silence where only the B string is ringing out. So take your guitar, maybe do some alternate picking on the B string and get familiar with the sensation, the physical sensation of lightly resting some portion of either your thumb and or your palm above, on the strings above the target string. Where things get a little bit trickier and where you're really going to start mastering this muting technique in your right hand is transitioning from string to string, one string to the next. So what I want to teach you right now is how to kill the sound of the string you're leaving as you transition to the next string below it. So if I'm playing on the G string, what I want to do is not only am I implementing this technique of lightly resting some portion of my palm or thumb on the strings above the target string, but as I transition from the G string to the B string, the side of my thumb, for me it's the side of my thumb, it touches down on the G string, which I was just playing. It touches down on the G string as I strike the B string, thus killing the sound of the G string so it doesn't continue ringing out. We don't want harmony here. So here's the right way to do it. The wrong way to do it. And here's the right way again. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to pause the video and you're going to start on the low E string. And as you transition from one string to the next, you're going to practice killing the sound of the string you're leaving. Again, you can use the side of your thumb like I do, or you can practice using some portion of your palm. But the key here is to kill the sound of the string as you're striking the next string below. I'll give you a quick example and then I want you to stop the video and practice it. The wrong way. And if you do it correctly, the high E string will be the only one ringing out. Since we already know how to mute the strings above the target string with our right hand, the left hand, it can take care of the muting of the strings below the target string. So my first finger is pressing down on the 7th fret of the G string, and it's also laying just flat enough to mute the strings below this D note. So it should sound like this. And the strings below it should be muted. You don't want to be laying your fingers too hard and too flat on the strings, or else you'll bar them, right? So what I want you to do is I want you to just play back and forth, up and down on that 7th fret of the G string, and make sure that your first finger that's pressing down there is laying flat enough to mute the strings below that 7th fret. Now this next technique with the left hand is really useful when you're playing lines. But what you want to do is the tip of your first finger is also barely touching the string above the target string. Now, your right hand should be doing most of this work, but this is really useful when you're doing hammer-ons and pull-offs. The tip of the finger is just touching the D strings to mute it. So if I play this 7th fret of the G string, and I test the D string above it, it should be muted, watch. So now what you can do is you can take this 7th fret and just get used to the sensation of the tip of your finger lightly touching the D string above it and see if it'll stay muted. Now to bring this full circle and to fuse the left hand with the right hand, we're going to take a simple pentatonic sequence. And if you're not familiar with this pattern, I'll provide a link below and you can click on that and study that and then come right back to the video. We're doing a B minor pentatonic sequence. And what we're going to do is we're going to descend the scale and then ascend the scale. And we're going to make sure that both our right hand technique and our left hand technique is solid. And we're trying to allocate as much of our awareness to both hands as possible. Your brain is trying to compute two different techniques at the same time, which why, again, it's important to gain familiarity in isolation and then fuse them together so that if something starts to fall off the tracks, your brain will, that's a signal. That's not how it was feeling when I was doing it in isolation. Let's bring it back and let's make sure we fuse them together correctly. So we're going to take this pentatonic sequence. We're going to descend. So watch. And then we're going to ascend the scale. So here's the right way to do it. And here's the wrong way if your right hand starts to lift up off the strings, or if the technique in your left hand your finger starts to come up or something. Here's how that will sound. So much noisier. Here's the right way again. Go ahead and pause the video, practice your descending, make sure you're laying your right hand flat enough on the strings above the target string, and then make sure every time you transition strings, your first finger is laying just flat enough to mute the strings below the string you're currently playing. And make sure the tip of that first finger, every time you lay it down, is just barely touching the string above that note that you're currently playing. So here's a few action steps to take. Every day before you start your main practice, warm up with that exercise that we already went through. Transition from string to string, starting with the low E string. Practice killing the sound as you transition. Then separately, practice getting comfortable with the physical sensation of laying your finger flat enough to mute the strings below the target string and have the tip of your finger just touching the string above it. And then finally, you'll take this pentatonic sequence and fuse both of those techniques together as you ascend the scale and descend the pentatonic scale. If you're really serious about taking any skill on the guitar, not just muting techniques, and learning at an accelerated pace, and learning that skill very proficiently, check out the Guitar Acceleration Program. It's incredible. If you have any questions about it or about this video, hit us up. We're more than happy to answer any questions you have. And remember, we're in this together. We're learning and growing together. Keep your practice playful, keep it fun, and keep growing. And don't let anything stop you from making the music that only you can make. Much love, and we'll see you in the next video.